Big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Perko command, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards out of there.
All right, welcome back to the Believe in Badger Football podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
Doing good. It's a Wednesday. I feel like after everything we've talked about, it's hard to be super excited. But again, I think every day we have, doing the podcast and on this earth should be celebrated as we see. So
absolutely. And I want to, I'm going to take over a little bit today.
Take it over.
Because first of all, A, it's my birthday, and I'm going to take over on my birthday. Yes. And woo. B, my number one birthday present this year is having this person on the podcast. Because this person is someone I have looked up to, even though I've never known. Someone I have looked up to for 22 years. Since I was a freshman in high school, this person is an absolute legend in my hometown of Hanover, New Hampshire, and Norwich, Vermont, across the river. He is a Badger throwing legend and an all-around amazing person. Adam Albrecht, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Bernie, for having me. This is a thrill to be able to get to talk to you and connect some dots and share some stories today.
So before we get into connecting some dots, I want to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag. They remain your number one sports for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it. Football, basketball, baseball, even though it's out of season, hockey, esports, golf, World Cup coming up. You know, they've got it over there at betonline.ag. Make sure to head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up and receive a free 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Use the promo code to get that welcome bonus over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we are going to start today with Norwich, Vermont's own Adam Albrecht. Quick background. Adam and I went to the same high school. Adam is the legend. He's the best thrower to ever go to Hanover High School. He has every record in the book. I am number 2 in every record book at Hanover High School. He went to the University of Wisconsin to throw. I went to the University of Wisconsin to throw. I got cut for Chris Presley. He didn't get cut, and that's where our paths diverge.
Wait, Matt, you know what they say about second place? Ricky Bobby. You know what Ricky Bobby says?
If you ain't first, you're last.
Exactly. As I joke, because second place is pretty awesome. Wait, Adam, share your best throws in high school.
Oh, well, let me go back. My story requires a little asterisk. Okay, so I started throwing my freshman year in high school, and I was 6 feet tall, 150 pounds. Okay, so when I started high school, I didn't gain an inch in height in high school. Came in at 6 feet, 150 pounds, and I graduated at 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. So I was eating and which is helpful. So I played football and did some track and field, and football I loved like the rest of you, and thought that I'd be playing in college, but I had a little surprise along the way. So on the track side, I came out and I was unremarkable my freshman year, but I had a big heart and imagined myself as a stud that I wasn't. So I put in a lot of work. And my second year, I think like my first year, I threw like 20. I remember throwing 27 feet in the shot with my first meet. I was terrible. And anyway, then my sophomore year, I improved 30 feet in the discus, and I improved 30 feet in the disc, and I think 7 feet in the shot. So that was like respectable, right, in our area. And I was feeling myself. I thought I'm going to be great next year, right? So the next year I came out and I had again quite good success, and I added another 31 feet to the discus. I was a state champ in New Hampshire, and I went on to compete in the New England championships. And as a junior, I was the New England champ in the discus. So for those of us in the Midwest, New England is Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine. So,
you'd be surprised at how many people, when I came to UW, be like, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm like, "I'm from New Hampshire." And you know how everyone puts up the mitten, be like, yeah, where is it? And I'd just be like, "It's here."
Yeah,
like,
right.
It's like not even close. Like on a different place. They're like, half the kids didn't even know it was a state. I was embarrassed.
That's right. So I was excited. I was within 2 feet of the state record my junior year, and thought I was going to crush it my senior year, and thought that I was going to become. I had my eyes on the New England record, which was like 191 at the time, and I was like, based on the 30 years of a 30 feet improvement a year, I thought I could get that. Well, after the third game of football my senior year, after the third game, I had 12 tackles as nose tackle, and had 9 of them were for losses. And I was like, I'm on a tear, right? I'm awesome at this. And then in practice, 3 days later, I had 2 teammates roll over my knee, popped my ACL, tore my medial collateral ligament, and had to have my ACL and had to have the knee reconstructed. And so at that point, football was done for me, and I thought, just hoping to have some kind of athletic future. So I had people telling me that I'd never be able to come back in this sport, and I didn't believe it. And I had surgery in October of my senior year. 5 months later, I was at the first track practice, kind of hobbling out there. It wasn't very good, but at least I was able to
standing and throwing the shot.
Totally. Totally. It was lame. I mean, but then I realized I was good enough. I was still good enough to do pretty well in the meets, and I did pretty well, and I improved a little bit, and then get to the meet of champions, the overall state meet we had in New Hampshire. And I lost in the discus in my last meet in the state. I got second for the first time in 2 years. And I was just devastated, right? Because I had my goal, and I had set my goal on trying to break that state record, and then I come up short at that meet. But I did qualify for New England's. And so the next week at New England's, I had that super moment, right, where I dug deep and like, this is your moment, you got to grab it, right? And it was like, if we would have had Eminem, you've been playing. And at New England Championships in Hartford, Connecticut, my senior year, the very last meet of my high school career, I PR'd through my furthest ever by 3 feet and broke the state record. My first best ever by 5 feet, broke the state record by 3, and that record stood for stood for 12 years.
It was still a state record when I was in high school. So
it was a while. It was broken by a guy who went to Iowa. Then
correct. Who was a hammer throwing specialist, actually. And he broke my New England hammer record.
No, yep. I didn't know you had a hammer record. How far did you go?
Because we didn't have it at New England Championship, so I went to JO's. Yeah. And I was I was the JO champion and record holder as a senior. So
did you work with Coach Wallen or something at Dartmouth, or how did you learn how to do it?
Yeah, my dad lifts with Coach Wallen.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Coach Wallen recruited me, and I thought that I was going to go to Dartmouth and play football. That was original plan. Buddy Tevens had recruited me, and Coach Pat O'Leary was recruited me as a linebacker. And then when I tore my ACL, they're like, "See ya."
So how did you end up then at Wisconsin, Adam? If with all that going on?
Yeah, great question. So my coach at the time, that our head coach was a guy named Tom Jennings, and he was connected to everybody. And he said, "Give me your 3 favorite schools, your 3 top schools, and I'll reach out to them, and we'll make something, and let them know about you." And so I said, "It's Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan." So we reached out. We set up recruiting trips with each of them. They were interested. We didn't tell them about my knee, and so. I went to Minnesota and told them when I got there, here's what's happened with my ACL. I had surgery 8 weeks ago, and they told me, I don't think you're going to be able to make it. and so I done. And my parents both went to Minnesota, and so, but I hated it. I hate everything about that school. Like everyone, we know we all hate Minnesota. I really hate Minnesota. And so then I went to Wisconsin, and I had a crazy experience on my recruiting trip. The school was closed. The day I showed up, the school closed because of a snowstorm. Do you know how much snow you have to have in Madison for the school to close? It was 26 inches of snow in 24 hours. So I had a really fun experience, though. When my dad and I pulled into the parking lot at Camp Randall, our car got stuck in the snow there in the parking lot. And this guy comes out, an athlete, because he had his letter jacket on, and helped push us out. It was freaking Troy Vincent, future first round draft choice, number 7 pick by the Miami Dolphins, is pushing me out of a snowbank. I mean, that was incredible. And the school was closed, but I got to see all the athletic facilities. And Madison was a party. I mean, nobody was going to school. It was just wild and fun and amazing. I was like, I love this place. So I remember the coach driving us around around campus in a Subaru, because you got to have a Subaru if the campus is closed. And kids were grabbing on the coach's bumper and sliding down the road, and people were traying down hills. And I thought, this is the most amazing place I've ever been. I saw the McLean Center, and you could throw the discus full length indoor all year round.
That was rare at that point to be able to find a place that had an indoor facility like that. I mean, we couldn't do that at Dartmouth.
That's right. So those two things, the fun of that snowstorm and the full length discus throwing all year round, had me sold. I canceled the trip to Michigan and I was done.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Go back. When did you throw the disc in the shot?
Yeah. So
as someone who I did track and field, but I was not as good as both of you. Well, but I like hearing.
Yeah. So my junior year, I threw a 167. So this is a lot of years ago now, right? My junior year, I threw 167, and then my senior year, I threw 5 feet for 172.6 was the state record then for 12 years. And I threw 50. The funny thing, I never even think about this. I was also the state champ in the shot put my senior year. I threw 53.9 in that, but that was with the bum knee. I always wonder what would have happened in high school if I hadn't messed that up.
I finished at 52.8 in the shot.
Oh, you were so close.
I was as good as this. I have short arms for being 6'3", so I only finished like 158, 156 in the disc or something like that. Again, I was also state champ. I was undefeated as a senior in shot put,
those are good numbers, Matt. I'm impressed. I would have been cheering for you had I know.
Right? My problem was that I hated lifting. And our gym in our weight room in our high school is the most pathetic room, Bernie, you have ever seen besides that very nice high school. The weight room is the most dingiest dungeon next to the football locker room. It's in a basement. There's no ventilation, and it was the most disgusting place to be.
I loved it. I just ate that stuff up. I like the dirtier, the grimier, the better. I remember coming back. My next younger sister was a thrower at Hanover too, and then she ended up being a 5-time All-American Division III shot putter. But I remember coming down to that weight room, hearing the AC/DC blast, and that's what we did.
Always AC/DC. Right?
And I hear this, the bars clanking and plates banging, and I walk in and I'm like, man, I love it when this place is crushed. And this was when I came home from college one summer. I walk into the weight room and there's only one person in there. It was my younger sister, and she's got 135 that she's ripping for cleans. I'm like, my girl right there.
That is fantastic. Okay, so for you, once you get to Madison, you've had your snow adventure. I had when I had my visit, it was on an April day. It just happened to be the first gorgeous day of spring. Yeah. This day I happened to show up, 78, sunny, and everyone, especially all the girls, are out at the terrace. This is my first time coming, and I'm like, sold. Don't need to go anywhere else. I don't even need to think about it. So it was perfect for me. So when you show up to campus, I mean, for us, it's 1,000. I mean, Bern knows this too. It's 1,000 miles away from home. What was your toughest transition athletically and then mentally?
I'm going to give it the opposite.
Okay, go for it.
I had a great connection with guys from New England, right? So there's a guy named Pete Diatalevi, who was a linebacker from Connecticut. Tarek Saleh remains a good friend of mine. I see him regularly at track meets now, but I always had that connection to us who came from the Northeast because we had that, 1,000 miles from home.
Quick interjection. Tarek's daughter's a beast of a thrower.
She's amazing. Well, and his other daughter's amazing high jumper. So and heptathlete. So those two girls are going to do special things. So it's exciting to see. So, but I have a fun story here. That there was a family in Norwich, Vermont, my tiny little town, the Lynch family, and the parents were there for a little bit in the early 70s, had a crop of 4 kids, and then moved back to Chicago, where the family was from. But they kept their house, and so they used to the family would come back for summers and to go skiing and stuff. And I got to know their daughter Katie Lynch, who was my age, pretty well. And when I announced that I was going to Wisconsin, she said, my brother plays football there. And so I was at their house one day during the summer, and her mom, Sheila, I shouldn't call her that, Mrs. Lynch, said, hey, so here's what I want you to do. When you get to the first football game, we always sit in these seats behind the bench, behind the player, the Badger bench. I want you to come over at halftime and say hi, right? So I do. So imagine I'm now on campus for a week. I go over at halftime, and there I am, and she's exactly where she said she was going to be. I meet this guy, and their son Brandon Lynch is the captain of the football team. He's a starting middle linebacker, right? And so I say hi, and I thought that was going to be it. And they said, "Hey, what are you doing after the game?" And I said, "Nothing." And they said, "Why don't you come out and join us for dinner?" So I joined them for dinner at Lombardino's or whatever the place is called, University, right? Or whatever that is. And so I have this great dinner. I'm like the night of the first Badger home football game. I'm out to dinner with the captain of the football team and his family. And Brennan says to me, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Nothing." I did have a plan, but I was like, "Nothing." And he said, "We're having a party. Why don't you come over?" And so I was like, so I did. So I went to this party over on Orchard Street the night after the first Badger game, and all the athletes were there. I mean, everybody. I met everybody. And he wanted to introduce me to everybody. Like, "Here's Adam from Norwich," right? And I was like, cute little kid. And I remember standing next to this guy, and I said, "Hey, so did you play today?" And he looks at me like I was an idiot. He goes, "I had 2 touchdowns today." It was a guy named Mike Rohn, who was an awesome tight end for the Badgers. And so immediately I knew everybody. Brennan took me under his wing, took me to the KK, took me to every house party he could. And so I immediately, as this dork from New England, knew all the athletes, and the rest of my time in Madison was amazing because of that.
What was your most difficult like mental transition?
Yeah, so I'll give 2 parts. One is when I was I forget if it was when I was a junior or senior in high school, Sports Illustrated did an article on Don Davey. And I was, and I loved it. I ate that article up. I read, everybody was talking. I remember the title was, "Gee, it's great to be a Badger." And it talked about how he was this amazing student and this amazing defensive player. And one of the things that it talked about him going to class, and it talked about how he always sat in the front row. So when I got to college, I was like, going Don Davey style, and I always sat in the front row, and it helped so much. And so I always felt like even in a 600 person lecture, it was just me and the professor, right? And maybe a couple people on my left or right. But I made a promise to myself I was going to go to every class. So I did that. And my challenges were twofold. It was difficult making the adjustment to college track and field. I mean, for the throwers, it's the worst, right? Because for everyone else, the tape measure and the watch are the same. The implements for us throwers gets heavier, and I'm not a big dude. I was about 6 feet, 215 pounds when I started school, and when I graduated, I was 6 feet tall, 211 pounds. So I actually lost weight, but the heavier implements were hard to adjust to. So my first year, I redshirted, but I was nothing. I was like nothing special. I was like, God, they're going to kick me off anytime now. My sophomore year, I got hurt. I hurt my back, and I basically missed the entire season. And so I was at a real crossroads. I didn't know, if I was going to stick around, if I was going to stay, meaning if I was going to thrive on this team. And then something really interesting happened. The coach who recruited me left. He went to Wake Forest for a really great opportunity, and they brought in a new coach, Coach Napier. All right, Mark Napier, who I know you know.
Napes, yep, he was my coach.
And Napes fundamentally changed the culture of that team, right? So they had been good before, but when he showed up, there was something in the chemistry.
He brought an intensity. He brought in this intensity to the practice. Like, you even notice when it was just Coach Nuttycombe, or if it was Nuttycombe. Like, I love Coach Nuttycombe. Coach Nuttycombe was great to me. Coach Nuttycombe was great to me. Yeah. But Coach Napes had that, like, this intensity that when you walk to the room, like, everyone, it's the kind of thing, everyone stands up a little bit straighter. Everyone's a little, 5% more attuned to everything that's going on. He had that to him, that in this character.
So Napes shows up, and Napes believed in me. I mean, and it was a great lesson that sometimes when somebody just believes in you, you believe in yourself, right? And that's what happened for me with Napes. And we jived, and so after really feeling like I floundered my first, my freshman year, or my redshirt freshman year, and my true freshman year, then that first year with Napes. Our team did well. We got third in the Big Tens, which was good, much better than we had done. And I came into the Big Ten championship in the discus ranked 17th, and I got 7th. So I scored points, and then people started saying, "Well, this is something, right?" The next year, I improved some more, and I placed 5th at Big Tens. And then my senior year, I did pretty well and ended up fourth all time in the discus at Wisconsin. And we won big, but the culture shift was the big thing, right? Napes and Nutty just had a thing, right? And Coach Smith with the cross country guys we just had it rolling. We won Big Tens in cross country, indoor and outdoor, both my junior and senior year. I got some rings, I got the ring that you thought you'd love and wear all the time, and then you put it away, and like I haven't seen that thing for 10 years.
You will wear it again, though.
I know. Well,
you will. You circle back to it like in your 50s. I feel like you're going to be like, yeah, exactly.
Right. So it ended up being great, right? And it's what I would tell any current athletes, like, stick it out, right? Keep putting in the work, and there's this compound effect. Listen, watch the film, learn all you can, and just keep getting better, and that stuff will pay out. Don't be the one that quits too soon. And that's what happened for me. I also picked up the 35-pound weight, and when I graduated, I had the school records in those two as well. So it ended up being, and I was a captain captain my senior year. So it was all a really fun, wonderful experience for me.
Well, let's loop that into what your thoughts are now on the transfer portal, because you're saying stick it out, grind. And I do think that that some people just are not a fit for Wisconsin, and they are probably a fit somewhere better.
That's right.
I don't think the transfer portal has really, I think it's changed. It's not really for that reason. What's your thoughts on the transfer portal? Because you could probably do it in all sports, right, Matt P?
That is correct.
So track dudes can just pick up and leave. So what's your thoughts on the grind?
I thought about it, right? I thought about doing something different than I think that it is no different than any other student, right? So there'll be people who go to Wisconsin and say this school wasn't for me, regardless of the athletics. And I think that you have to think school first, right? And then if the athletics don't work out, do whatever works for you. You live once, figure it out. And my point about staying with it doesn't necessarily mean stay with that that school or that coach or whatever. It means keep believe in yourself, keep betting on yourself. So I'm up for and interested in allowing people to transfer and find their best place. And I don't like the idea of that that we used to punish people for in a significant way to transfer. Now let's let them play right away. To that end, like when we think about how that's affected football, I just want to talk about how when I was in school, track and football were inextricably linked. I mean, I got a list here of the football players that were on my track team, included Tony Simmons, Reggie Torian, Cecil Martin, Matt Nyquist, Lee DeRamus, Kevin Huntley, Michael London, Kenny Gales, Bobby Meyer, Ross Kalaji, Giscard Bernard, and my roommate Tom Berger was a punter on the team my first year, and so we wouldn't have won those championships without that. But I had another teammate, Rodney Shelton, who was on our team who transferred and had a really good experience. I think at Middle Tennessee State or one of those. But you got to find what works for you. Fit is everything.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting to talk about because we had Brian Calhoun on, right, and he transferred,
for Colorado.
But like it was before the portal, right? So back in the days we had to sit out a year. And one of the things that I like about the transfer portal, I think it's complete BS when they had to sit out a year for transfer. And that's just punishing kids that's just punishing 18, 19, 20-year-old people for being 18, 19, and 20, right? And like coming to understand themselves better. So I think that alone is a great thing. The problem, obviously, is like the tampering. Like, are you going to go like, probably right now, if you were in college, Adam, you like Florida and Arkansas and like the super track powers are probably trying to poach you. They're probably in your DMs right now, trying to bring you to their program with NIL deals and money and stuff like that. And to me, that's where it gets even slimier, but it's also just sort of part and parcel with the way everything is going today.
The NIL. So if we get into NIL, like I can go run deep on this but this is really, really interesting challenge. A really interesting challenge because I didn't like the way it was. I mean, I always thought like it's crazy that you could be the Hebrew Hammer and sell tickets and have your jersey for sale on campus.
And you know how many
time of that?
Bernie was at his peak. Like my freshman year, Bernie was the dude. There were so many 45s. Like it was a sea of 45s in Section O. It was awesome.
Right. But how much money did you make off of that?
Literally, I got free shots at the college club. And that was
right.
And I at the time, like, I'll take all these free drinks. It was great at Wando's and the college club. But realistically, man, it hurts to think back about like what the monetizing of this beautiful face and body would have been is nuts. And
Bernie, I think what I want
to
to do is recreate the picture of George on the couch from Seinfeld, the George Costanza on the couch picture in Seinfeld with you. I think that is going to sell for like millions of dollars. Yeah,
I mean, at this point, my card sells for like 9 cents on Amazon or eBay. So I have missed my window, but I think the NIL is set up for people who don't have, the long-term NFL to make money while they can. And I don't think the NIL is doing what it's supposed to be doing, because it's not giving everybody money. It's giving the dudes who don't need money.
Yeah, it's a funny deal, right? And I've been on a couple sides of the NIL situation here. Okay, so if you fast forward, so after college, I went into advertising, and so I have today I own my own advertising agency, and so we deal with a lot of athletes and opportunities to work with student athletes. And the NIL stuff is not for everyone. I mean, what you don't think about is this. If you're a college athlete, you already have 2 freaking jobs, right? You don't need a third. And to do NIL right, it is a job, right? It is a responsibility to show up at places, to make appearances, to do lives online.
But Adam, not to cut you off for a second, but I'm not throwing Graham Mertz under the bus, but he's just the one that comes to mind. When they dropped the NIL, he had a t-shirt internet website out. So for him, I don't know his background, but I'm assuming that it's not as he's not from an area that, like he can create this website.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's not from a place, to me at least, I don't know his situation or his financials. I don't know that. But what I feel like the Nigel Hayes, who's like, I can't even have my parents come to watch because they can't afford a bus.
Right.
From
and
Toledo.
No one's allowed to, like the university can't pay for them to come to the right. They can't help the student out.
So listen, I'm not throwing Graham Mertz under the bus. No. I'm just saying that, like from what the NIL is supposed to possibly do, I think the thought was a good thought. Same with the transfer portal. For the 1 or 2 kids who are like, listen, I hate it here because I don't feel good here. Yeah. Now they can leave. But now it's like, I didn't get 20 carries, or no one's throwing me the ball. Listen, it's happening in the NFL too. Right. Half the Jets wide receivers are like, I don't have any touches. I want to leave. They all want trades. So it's not just this level. This might be the landscape of like sports now, and where we are in this world. We don't have to dive into that because that's a big topic. But like what I'm saying is like an affluent person can create products.
Do it anyway. Right?
Right. You can have a team, right? Like somebody could hire you if they could hire you, or an advertising person. So I think like we're missing the boat on a lot of things here. But keep going.
There's also another challenge. Like for if you are one of the big things that we tie into when you get into an NIL deal is the athlete's social media. Okay, so your following, your audience, and if you aren't the type to post much, you got problems, right? Because now what? You don't post much because it's not you, and now suddenly they're like every post is is endorsing something. That doesn't feel right, and you're going to feel embarrassed about that. Like you got to think about these things. The expectations, because I've dealt with this. I've worked on NIL deals that went bad, right? Where we pulled the plug and said, you're not living up to your obligations. And do you want to be a college kid who's now who now has an ad agency and advertisers saying, you're screwing up? Like you don't need that kind of pressure. There's work that summer job, right? Like that'd be much easier. So there's a lot more pressure than people think. And one of the nuances that I wish the student athletes had a good sense of is that the opportunities that they're typically going to get are going to be from less astute marketers or less astute, businesses. Whereas let's say Nike comes to you, they're going to know exactly how to treat you, right? They're going to know how to engage. They're going to know what to do and what to expect and whatnot. And it's going to be a small portion of what they do. Whereas when the local sporting goods store comes to you and that's all, and they don't have a big budget, they're going to expect they're going to expect more of you than you could ever deliver. And then that adds more pressure and it's a recipe for disappointment. And I don't want to give more pressure to these kids because that's going to be the case for 90% of the NIL deals that they're going to get.
I have to assume they have floodgates at within the office to be like, guys, this is too much for this kid. Maybe.
It all comes down, comes down to individual agreements. So it's hard to say, but my point is that, like, I do a lot of work with, significant athletes, right? I've done a lot of work with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Danica Patrick and Kevin Harvick. If you see any of the Jonathan Taylor stuff with UW Credit Union, that all comes from our agency. We actually recorded the radio here. I got my Dale call. You got the duck call. Yeah, that was amazing when Dale comes flying through towards the duck blind with that thing. So I've worked with people who know that this is their business, right? And for most, 18 to 23-year-olds, this is not, this is more than they signed up for.
Well, because you have to go to school.
Yeah, because you have to go to school, and you've got 2 full-time jobs. And
school's hard enough, let alone going to practice and waking up in the morning and working.
Yeah,
it is
Bert,
a full-time
can you imagine,
job.
like, if you were, like, if you in 2004, if Wando had hired you to do a commercial for not that Wando's needs a commercial, but if Wando had hired you to do a commercial for Wando's,
I would have done it for free.
They had you out at, like, they had to get you at 5 or like 3 in the morning or something because you're lifting at 5 or whatever to do a commercial shoot. Going into your sleep schedule, those things take time. They take a lot of time, and it's more than people realize. And I want to talk about the matching companies with athletes for a second, which is something you mentioned, because that is something that I noticed. Braylon Allen did really well early. His like first NIL deal was with like a strength and lifting company, or like they did like barbells or something like that.
Iron Jock.
What is he known for? He's known for lifting and his strength, and he's like one of the strongest kids to ever come into the program. That's a perfect marriage, right? That's a great marriage, and those are the kinds of NIL deals. I think that's like NIL going right, in my opinion.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what you want ultimately, is to figure out things that you could see. The best situation is you seek the opportunities out yourself rather than just take whatever comes to you. I mean, it's a little bit like going to the KK on Saturday night. You'd rather be the one approaching the ladies than just take whoever comes up to you. I mean, if you had to settle for whoever walked up to you, you might not have the best experience.
Or you might.
Yeah, you might.
You might. Hey,
let me. If you guys don't mind, I was just thinking of something when we talk about all this.
Please.
I wrote a little book during COVID that I published a year ago called "What Does Your Fortune Cookie Say?"
Yeah.
And I write a number of things. It's 80 life lessons the universe is trying to share with you. And I wrote this to share some of the best stories and experiences and lessons I've learned. And there's one that I share in here about my experience in the first meetings we had on the track team, just to show the demands of college athletes. And Coach Ed Nuttycombe, has won more Big Ten championships in any sport than any coach in Big Ten history, right? And he welcomed us to the program with this speech, and he said, "Gentlemen, as a member of this team, always remember that academics come first. You are a student at the University of Wisconsin first. Track and field comes second. Let me be absolutely clear about that. But if you want to be on this team, track better be so close behind your schoolwork that you can barely tell the difference. Academics are priority 1. Track and field is priority 1A." Right. And I just remember thinking that is so badass. And it makes me feel like that's how we're going to accomplish great things. And so when you have that kind of pressure and that kind of drive to be great at 2 things, it's really tough to throw a third in.
Dude, I love that. I love it because that is every mentality of every coach, I think, in college.
Right.
Although, I mean, I can't guarantee, every coach says the right things. Like, oh yeah. Guys, they tell your parents, oh, we're going to support your son. He's going to have the best academic experience ever. And then you're like, wait, what? I got to get up at 6 a.m. to get out. I'll be done with lift at 9 to be in a class that I should have been at 8:50. Yeah. So I'm already late. I'm exhausted. And I have to go from at 2:10 when classes have to end for me. I have to be in a meeting at 2:30 with my ankles taped and my stuff on. Almost got me. And my stuff on. I'm like, listen, coach, you're right. Academics is very important. I just don't think it's that important this second to you or to anyone. Is the game against Michigan or are any away? These games are kind of more important. So I listen, I hear you. Do I think that's changed? No. But I also think that You listen, you picked a school based off of where you wanted to go compete.
That's right.
And I'll say this out loud. Like, we're not normal students. we picked that school. I picked Wisconsin to go compete in the Big Ten. I could have went to Syracuse. Right. That's not a great school. They didn't have Donovan McNabb anymore. They beat Wisconsin like 30 years before I even thought of Wisconsin, right? So you're not a normal student in the fact that like you literally go there to say, I'm gonna strap a helmet on and beat up all these other teams. I always try to.
Well, I think
academics is a subpar. I think academics is 1A. If I had to rate my own experience, Wando's is 1A.
I was going to say, I think it would football, Wando's, KK, then academics.
Don't forget like the state, Monday. I mean, I took class at a lot of different places.
Yeah.
They were just all around State Street.
Oh yeah. I can tell you that that my sophomore year, first semester of sophomore year, was my low point academically. It was my high point for fun and with the ladies, and it was so enjoyable that I was like, that's when I created my own personal saying that says, if you love it too much, it goes away. Right.
Well, Adam, listen, in 2004 we started the season 9-0. That's my lowest grade for 2.2. And not one person asked me if they cared about it. Right. Not one person. There wasn't a GA. There was no one who's like, oh, Matt, you're not doing so hot right now. And I'm like, what? We're 9-0. Like, nobody cares.
You could have also been like, yeah, I just single-handedly ran over Penn State. Like, chill out.
At that point, I might have had a 2.5. So I think I was doing okay. And then it went downhill. Listen, I wasn't going to fail a class. Like, there's no chance of that. But, I mean, a 2.2 is not – that's like a bunch of C's and, like, God forbid, probably an A in like music.
That's what we call wrestler grades.
But that was a pivotal moment for me though. Like I think though that just like getting beat in the athletic competition, sometimes having those academic moments where you're like, God, this just doesn't feel like me, right? Because I think part of what I loved about going to Madison was that the kids were smart and they worked really hard, and then they partied really hard, right? Like that. Like we have such a great brand, right? The University of Wisconsin brand is so great, and if you're an athlete, like you're a special breed. And I remember having that moment at the end of my first semester, sophomore year, when I was like, never again, right? Like I'm too proud of myself to let this happen. I came here to see how big a fish I could become in this big pond, and how much I could take academically. And now this is no joke. I had like my Hulkster moment. I was like, I'm coming back, and I never had. After that, I had, because of my 5 years. My 5-year plan, I had 7 more semesters and never had below a 3.5 GPA ever.
Good for you.
Good for you.
But I mean but sometimes, like, I think that's what you need in life sometimes, right? Is to be disappointed enough to make a change, to do great things. And that's really the gift. It was a gift of my knee injury in high school. It was a gift of my worst semester in college to hit rock bottom and bounce and say, that's not me. And now I'm going to show the world what I'm made of. So.
All right. Well, we've only got 5 more minutes left here for Byrne because he's got a meeting to hop onto. But I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing today, because the way we got in touch was from AJ Taylor, actually, who we had on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I saw you were promoting his new game, and I was like, that can't be the same Adam Albrecht. Nope, it's the same Adam Albrecht. So we have to make this happen. So, how did you and AJ get in touch? Because he was one of our favorite guests we've had on the podcast. I mean, we love everyone who comes on, let's face it, but AJ has just like an energy that is like you can't not want to be around all the time. Talk about what you've done with AJ, what you're doing with your business, and go from there.
Yeah, let me connect a couple dots here. So after college, I went into advertising. The quick story is I started as a copywriter and had pretty good success, and before long, I was the chief creative officer for the largest ad agency in the Southeast. I had offices in Columbus, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, New York, and LA at one point, and was crushing. I worked on Nationwide Insurance, Bob Evans, Wells Fargo, 6 brands of Coca-Cola, Universal Studios, UPS, Wells Fargo. I think I said Cisco, Nike, right? So we were crushing, and we sold the agency was sold to a big ad agency holding company. And then a couple of years later, I had 2 former clients come to me and say, I'd love to work with you again, but I don't want to work with your current agency. Would you think about starting your own business? And I said, yes, I would. And so in 2016, I started my own agency called The Weaponry. And I was in Atlanta at the time. We had my mother-in-law had a health issue, and she's in Wausau, Wisconsin. And so we thought, let's be closer. And so we moved to Milwaukee. Actually, just sold our house in Atlanta last fall, which was a good time to sell a house in Atlanta. But I run an agency and ad agency, and so I do a ton of work with Jonathan Taylor because of that. UW Credit Union is one of our clients, but we work with a lot of really great brands. But the reason, the way that I got in touch with AJ was through, and this is my promotion for Badger Connect, right? So Badger Connect is an app that it's a networking app for all current Badger athletes and all letter winning alums. So I got on there. He and I found each other through that. He saw that I was an entrepreneur and wanted to reach out and talk about things. So we set up a Zoom, a few days later, and he told me about this idea he had. And I said, and he's told me a few times, he goes, in that meeting you said, man, he said, you got to bet on yourself, right? You got to bet on yourself. And so he said, I did. And now I got this game, and so he was at our office in Milwaukee, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago. And with this game, and we're giving them support and encouraging them to make great things happen. But that's how that came about. But one of the great things about being back in Milwaukee is the ability to be involved with current student athletes, with the alumni, with the athletic program. I was over in Madison on Sunday and meeting with the coaches of the track program, and so that's been wonderful. And I try and give back. I've spoken to athlete leadership groups and stuff, and so I realized that enough people helped me along the way that I'm happy to share whatever I know.
That's really beautiful. And I think that, sort of goes to the centrality of something we've talked with a lot of people about, is sort of about just the brother and sisterhood that Badgers have and want to give back and help other Badgers. And so, I mean, I think I saw the other day, Badgers helping Badgers was trending on Twitter or something like that. And I was like, that's awesome.
I love that. So a quick story there. I have one of my college teammates, Brian Jones, connected me to one of his good friends who had a son who was a high school thrower at Whitefish Bay. So I'm in Mequon, they're in Whitefish Bay. So we're rival schools. I coached the girls throwers at Mequon, at Homestead High School, Mequon. But I reached out, and said, hey, if you need some help, because they said that this guy, my friend's son didn't have a throwing coach, but he had some talent. Well, so I said, hey, I'm happy to work with you. And it turns out he was 154 foot discus thrower, and had never had a coach. So I started working with him. And this past year, he threw 181 feet. He had the second farthest discus throw in the state, next to one of my college teammates' son. But his name is Joe Brunner, and he's now he's a lineman for the Badgers, right? So Joe is the man, and so this goes full circle, right? The athlete brotherhood, or fraternity, including sisters are great too, right? Like we're all the same. I've got no gender bias. But by helping each other do great things, so it's wonderful. I saw Joe on Sunday at Camp Randall, and fun to keep helping each other do great things together.
That's amazing. Well, you guys can find out all about Adam and his agency at theweaponry.com. We'll link to that in the show notes here. I know Bern has a meeting he has to hop on to, so we are going to say, Adam, this has been incredible. We are definitely going to have you on again just to talk about more stuff, because I got 2 questions in and I've got 30 more. So thank you so much for hopping on with us. And until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thanks for listening to the Believe in